Have you ever felt like you don't fit in, but not because you're inferior, but because of something darker, something more complex? Have you noticed that while everyone seems to talk non-stop, you only observe?
Not because you have nothing to say, but because you know that when you speak, every word will have weight. Have you ever wondered why you are so comfortable in silence, while others fear it as if it were a threat? There's something about you that you don't fully understand, something you even tried to suppress to seem normal. But it's not. It's not shyness. It's not insecurity. It's something else. Something most people wouldn't understand. And perhaps something you haven't dared to face yet. You've been told 1,000 times. You need to participate more. You should talk. Stop being so quiet. But deep down, didn't you feel that the person saying it just didn't understand you because you understand them? And that's the problem. You read the subtext, the intentions behind the words, the fear in the eyes of those pretending to be brave, the anxiety of those who need to be heard even when they have nothing real to say. While others drown in trivial conversations, you float between invisible layers of meaning. And no one knows you see it, because you don't announce it, you just know. Period. You are an anomaly among broken mirrors. But of course, in a world that values speed over depth, your silence makes others uncomfortable. Your gaze unsettles. Your pause confuses. They see you and don't understand what's going on in your mind. And that ignorance makes them nervous. Do you know why? Because they can't stand not being able to read you. Because in reality, you're not invisible. You're unreadable. And that, in an era where everyone thinks they know everything about everyone, makes you an enigma. And the enigmatic, by nature, generates rejection, or silent admiration. Sometimes both. You've felt it. That mixture of attraction and suspicion you spark without trying. As if your mere presence forces others to face their own superficiality. You, who seem quiet, but are registering every detail. You who go unnoticed, until you decide it's time to act. Then everyone turns, and they don't understand why. Does it sound familiar? Have you lived that scene? You have. More than once. They've told you that you need to get out of your comfort zone, when in reality, your comfort zone is exactly where they couldn't survive. In depth. Where ideas are dense, where thought overwhelms, where silence weighs. Do you see it? You're not shy. You're something else. Something that still doesn't have a name for them. But you can identify it. You're more awake, more attentive, more aware. You're not less social. You're more selective. You're not introverted. You're calculating. And not because you're pretending. It's because you understand that talking just to talk is a waste of energy. And you simply don't waste anything. Think about this. What if your silence wasn't a flaw, but a sign, a clue, a mark, a signal that you're operating on another level? You're not mute, you're precise. You're not distant, you're far but watching. And that scares people. Most need approval. You need truth. Most need noise. You need structure. While they expose themselves to feel alive, you breathe in the shadows. Because you know that's where empires are built that don't need applause. And now tell me, do you really think you're shy? There's something else we haven't mentioned yet, but you feel it every time you enter a room, and the gazes don't seek you, but they feel you. You don't speak, but something in you changes the atmosphere. It's as if your mere presence reminds them of something they don't want to see. You don't do it on purpose, but it happens. You make them uncomfortable. And not because you're aggressive. You make them uncomfortable because you don't play their game. Because your silence isn't submission, it's control. And that, for those who need constant attention, is unforgivable. You're revealing something without saying anything. And that's your most dangerous advantage. There are people who dominate a room by talking. You dominate it with just one look. But no one taught you that. You discovered it by being misunderstood. By hearing how they called you weird, closed, distant, without understanding that what they really couldn't stand was your clarity. Because when you're more aware than others, you can't help but see what others deny. You see the insecurities they disguise with jokes. You see the emptiness behind their social masks. You see the fear camouflaged in forced laughs. And worst of all, you know you can't say anything. Because if you did, it would be like shining a light on cockroaches. They'd run. And here is where everything becomes murky. You're not alone, but many times you feel that way. Because being awake in a world that sleeps with open eyes is exhausting. The answer came late, but it came. And it was brutal. Because you weren't born to be like everyone else. You were born to observe what they ignore, to build where they destroy, to think when they react. You're not broken, you're calibrated for something else. The thing is that something else isn't in the life manuals they taught you. It doesn't fit in noisy parties or in meetings where everyone competes to speak louder. What you have is elsewhere. It's in the decisions no one sees, in the subtle gestures others ignore, in that brutal intuition you have that rarely fails. Because while they need data, you already know. Because you don't think with noise, you think with echoes, with patterns, with silences. And that, my friend, is not weakness. It's evolutionary advantage. It's natural selection in its most subtle form. It's intelligence disguised under an innocent appearance. And here is where everything changes. Because once you understand who you really are, you stop expecting others to understand you. You stop trying to translate yourself into a language that isn't yours. And there, in that exact moment, your true advantage begins. You no longer seek to fit in, you seek to impact. You no longer want approval, you want direction. You stop being the person who accommodates and become the one who makes others uncomfortable. And when you make others uncomfortable with your mere presence, it's because your energy is breaking structures they didn't even know they had. Your silence is no longer passivity. It's architecture, it's strategy, it's mastery. People don't understand why they feel observed when you're in the room, why they lower their tone when you turn, why they avoid your eyes. I'll tell you clearly. Because they see something in you that they can't stand seeing in themselves. Coherence. You're a threat without needing to raise your voice. And that only happens with someone who has learned to live from depth. You've spent years thinking your way of being was a mistake to correct, when in reality, you were the correct operating system in a world full of emotional viruses. While they keep competing for attention, you've already realized that power isn't in being seen, but in seeing everything, in seeing before, in seeing more. You're not shy, you're invisible on purpose. And that's the most lethal thing you can be in this time. And now when someone tells you that you need to talk more, just smile. Because they think that the one who doesn't speak doesn't think. But you know that the one who doesn't need to talk has already thought it all through. They underestimate you. And that's what protects you. You don't need to prove anything. Because while they look at you as if you were an unfit piece, you've already seen how the whole board moves. So yes, you can remain quiet. But let your silence sound like a threat. Let your gaze say what your voice doesn't need to say. Let your calm make the world nervous, because that's your essence, and you're not going to apologize for it anymore. Now, if you've made it this far, it's no accident, because this video wasn't for everyone. It was for you, for that silent mind that has felt out of place for years, for that inner voice that has been ignored too long. This video isn't content. It's a mirror. One that not everyone is ready to look into, but you are. So if what you just heard has resonated with you uncomfortably accurately, I want you to point it out. I want you to expose just enough. Comment below. My silence isn't empty. It's radar. Leave them that phrase. To those who don't understand, let them be consumed by curiosity. To those who do, let them know they're not alone. And if all this stirred something inside you, if you feel that finally someone has put words to that calm storm you carry inside, subscribe. Because here, we don't speak for everyone. We speak for those who see more, for those who think when no one listens, for those who understand the power of silence. See you in the next video. Or not. Maybe I'm just watching you from the shadows. After all, you already know. The one who is silent doesn't concede. The one who is silent dominates. You've felt that loneliness, haven't you? You're surrounded by people and still, everything feels distant. Not because you don't care, you care too much. That's why you reserve yourself. That's why you choose your battles. That's why you isolate yourself, not out of cowardice, but out of clarity. You know that speaking to those who don't listen is a waste, and you don't waste time on noise. You prefer depth, even if it hurts, even if it leaves you alone. I'll tell you something no one has told you. That feeling of being the odd one in your group, that emptiness in conversations that don't fill you up, that constant sense of not fitting in, it's not a flaw. It's a sign that you've crossed a barrier others don't even know exists. You've developed an awareness you can't turn off. And that's why sometimes you wish you could go back. Be normal. Enjoy the things that fascinate everyone else. But you can't. You've tried, I know. You've tried to force yourself to talk more, to fit in, to follow the script. But something inside you breaks every time you do, because you betray yourself. And here's the raw truth. You can't go back. You can't pretend ignorance once you've seen what's beneath the surface. That clarity you carry is irreversible, and it's not easy to live with. But you wouldn't change it, because in the midst of the pain, there's power, one that very few understand. You don't speak little because you can't. You speak little because you know words have consequences, because you've seen what a poorly chosen phrase can cause. You've lived how a single idea can change the way others perceive you, so you choose carefully. You're prudent, not mute. And that's the difference no one notices. They live to please. You live to understand. They act. You anticipate. They react. You analyze. And that makes you seem slow, when in reality, you're years ahead. But of course, that comes with a price. Yes, all of this sounds like a superpower, but it's not, at least not always. Not when you're still in the phase of trying to understand why you're different. Not when you're alone in the middle of a conversation full of people, feeling like a spy in foreign land. And the price of silence is not cheap. It's cost you misunderstandings, unfair labels, missed opportunities, connections that never formed. It's cost you seeing how others, with less substance but more volume, occupied spots you never even considered contesting. Not because of lack of ability, but because you thought someone would notice what you carry inside without you having to shout it out. Mistake. People don't see depth if the surface doesn't shine. And you, for principles or instinct, have never been the one to shine with fireworks. What you have is something else. What you have is the light of a candle in a dark room. Subtle, constant, hard to ignore once someone notices it, but invisible if they're looking for neon. And that's how you pass. Unnoticed by many, unforgettable for a few, but those few, they really see you. And when that happens, everything changes. Because your shyness, that misused word, is actually a filter, one that repels the superficial and attracts the authentic. It's an elegant trap. Mediocre people won't even come close. The empty ones won't even perceive you. But those who have something inside, they recognize you instantly. It's like they speak the same hidden language. And that's where your apparent disadvantage becomes a tactic. Because you don't sell yourself cheaply. And that, in a world where everyone is desperate to be validated, is subversive, have you noticed? The more silence you show, the more noise you make. Because they don't understand why you don't need their approval. They're offended. They take it as a challenge, as if your distance questions their way of existing. And they're right. It does question it. Because without saying anything, you demonstrate that it's possible to be whole without constant exposure. That it's possible to have clarity without needing to talk about it. That it's possible to be solid without asking for permission. And that disarms them. Do you know one of your most dangerous skills? That when you decide to speak, you make others feel that every word matters. Because you don't need to fill silences with noise. You dominate them. You let the empty spaces speak for you. And when it's your turn, people listen. Not because you shout, but because you don't. But you didn't learn this by reading books. You learned it by being uncomfortable. By years of feeling out of place. By conversations where everyone seemed to be in sync. Except for you. Where the laughs didn't come naturally. Where your comments fell like stones in water because you were simply on another frequency. And that dissonance made you think something was wrong with you. You never said it out loud, but you asked yourself more than once, why can't I be like everyone else?